I hope that you're all psyched. Welcome everyone. So as Alessia already introduced me, I am Yotam. I'm a developer advocate at AI21 Labs. I am part of the team behind AI21 Studio, which is the platform that serves the state-of-the-art Jurassic 1 models, which you'll all be working with during this hackathon. I am truly thrilled to have so many talented and passionate generative AI enthusiasts from all over the world joining us for this event. We've been preparing it for a long time, and now that it's starting, I can't express enough how excited I am to see all of you here. So let's begin, shall we? Okay, so as this big title here says, today I will be covering some of the characteristics of an outstanding project, how to take a good project and turn it into an outstanding one. But before I start this workshop, I want to take a moment to talk about creativity and innovation. Now, as developers, I know that we don't have just developers participating in this hackathon, but let's talk about developers as a general term for people who are creating new projects, new applications, new software. Even if you are UX designers or you are a data-driven people, we still find ourselves caught in day-to-day work or study building and maintaining systems. But hackathons like this are one great opportunity to break out of the mold and think outside the box. And when you're deciding on the concept of your project, I encourage you to expand your horizons and push the boundaries of what you think is possible. This hackathon is all about generative AI, and I believe that we can all agree that this technology has the potential to revolutionize the way we live and the way we interact with machines generally. So as you begin brainstorming and planning your projects, don't be afraid to think big. The possibilities are endless, and I can't wait to see what you all will come up with. So today we will be discussing what sets truly great projects apart from the rest. We'll be exploring the key components that make up the foundation of a successful project. I like to call these components the pillars of a great project, which includes innovative concept, and that is definitely useful. Now, innovative concept, the first pillar of an outstanding project is a unique and imaginative idea. We will discuss some of the ways that Jurassic 1 models, Jurassic 1, in case some of you haven't heard already, are the state-of-the-art series of language models that AI21 Labs and AI21 Studio, that's the department inside AI21 Labs that serves our Jurassic 1 models, the ones that you'll all be working with during this hackathon. So we will discuss some of the ways that these Jurassic 1 models can be used to bring fresh and innovative concepts to life, and definitely useful. The second pillar of a great project is its ability to address real-world issues or pain points. We'll see how you can use your technical skills, any technical skill, to make a real impact on people's lives by solving a real problem, revealing a real pain, or enhancing an existing functionality. Beautiful code. The third pillar of a great project is a well-structured and readable code. It is important for developers to be able to understand and maintain the code base easily. And of course, superb documentation. Superb documentation that is well written for developers as well as end users. The final pillar of a great project is its documentation, which should be clear, concise, and easy to understand for both developers and end users. And with these pillars in your mind, we'll explore ways to bring your ideas into life and take your projects to the next level. So let's begin by diving into the first two pillars. Now, when it comes to creating a project for this hackathon, it's important to remember that the truly outstanding project starts with a unique and imaginative idea. But coming up with that idea can be easier said than done, I know. So here are some things to keep in mind as you brainstorm and come up with a concept for your project. First, let's talk about the things you should probably avoid. So here are my don'ts. Don't copy, be original. That's the first thing. One big pitfall to watch out for is building another version of an existing product or feature. Unless you have a truly unique twist on the idea or plan to recreate it in a very different way, it's best to come up with something new and original. My advice here is this: do some research and make sure that your idea hasn't been already built by someone else before you start building it. Another thing to avoid when coming up with an idea for your project is trying to tackle too many things at once. It's easy to get excited about all the possibilities that large language models such as Jurassic 1 offer and want to include everything in your project, but trying to do too many things at once can make your project feel scattered and disjointed. Instead, focus on one or two key features and ideas and do them well. By narrowing your focus, you'll be able to create a project that is more polished and cohesive. And additionally, by focusing on a smaller set of features rather than many, you'll be able to iterate and improve on them more effectively rather than spreading yourself just too thin, you know? But with that being said, don't hesitate to think big. Remember, even if you only manage to submit a minimum viable project, and we'll discuss further about this later when we'll talk about the Rick and Morty episode generator. So a minimum viable project, an MVP, as they call it in the industry, that's okay. You can go with this. You can always come back and complete the missing pieces after the hackathon, just like Twitter started as a hackathon MVP, for those who weren't aware of that fact. I always love to mention this fact. Now let's talk about the things you should keep in mind when coming up with your idea. So here are my list of do's. One thing that's helpful is to brainstorm with your team. Share your fields of interest and try to combine them with those of your teammates when choosing the theme or topic of your project. When everyone in the team is passionate about the chosen project and the theme of it, it makes the project much more enjoyable to work on. Another key step in creating a successful project is to conduct a thorough research on your chosen theme or subject and to plan ahead. What I mean by this is taking the time to really think about your project from all angles, including identifying potential obstacles or challenges that you might encounter during the development process. This can include things like researching industry trends and best practices, understanding your target users and their needs, and identifying any technical limitations or requirements that your project may have down the road. By doing this research in advance and planning ahead, you'll be able to better understand, you'll just have a better grip and better understanding of what you need to focus on when building your project. And you'll be more prepared to overcome any obstacle that may arise down the road. And let's get to the third important thing here. When developing your project, it's important to consider the end user's perspective. As you progress in your planning and development, take the time to ask yourself if the final product will be something new, refreshing, and surprising from the end user's point of view. This will help you to ensure that your project not only solves a problem or enhancing a functionality that already exists, but also provides an exciting and unique experience to the end user. Now, in summary, when creating a project for this hackathon, be creative, think big and unique. Do your research. I'm sorry that I'm counting too many fingers here, but do your research and think from an end user perspective. It is important to avoid doing something that's been done before and to make sure that you're solving a real problem or pain point. And with these tips in mind, I'm confident you'll come up with something truly outstanding. Now let's dive into a few real-world application examples. Let's start with AI Dungeon. AI Dungeon is a great example of how powerful language models can be when it comes to creating innovative and engaging experiences. The use of Jurassic 1 models allows the game, they use Jurassic 1 models in the game, and it allows them to generate endless plots, characters, and stories, making each playthrough unique and exciting. The game's creators, Latitude, have found ways to harness the capabilities of AI21 Studio to create a text-based adventure game experience that is truly one of a kind. Let me slow this down a little bit, just so while I talk, you can follow through on everything that's happening here. So let's do this. Yeah, 105 is excellent. Now, one of the key elements that makes AI Dungeon stand out is that it's not just a fun game, but it also addresses a real-world problem. Many text-based adventure games like this one, the players of these games find it difficult to come up with new stories and ideas for their game. AI Dungeon solves this problem by providing an endless source of inspiration and plot twists. Another important aspect of AI Dungeon is that it reveals a real pain. Playing text-based adventure games can be a lot of fun, but it also requires a lot of preparation and organization. AI Dungeon takes care of all this behind-the-scene work, allowing players to focus on what really matters, the story and the characters. Overall, AI Dungeon is an outstanding project that demonstrates how language models can be used to create innovative and engaging experiences. It is a great example of how innovative concepts that solve real problems and reveal real pains can enhance an existing functionality and lead to a great project. And one more thing you should know. Latitude, the creators of this game, found the idea and combined together as a team in a hackathon, just so you know. And today, this is probably the leading D&D online game in the world. Let's go next to the next example. Let me just see that it follows through. Okay, Verb. Verb is another great example of how large language models, and especially Jurassic One, can be used in an application to relieve a pain, and in this case, writer's block. The team behind this clever online service identified the need for a tool that can help writers overcome writer's block and they came up with Verb. By incorporating Jurassic One models, the tool is able to generate new ideas and suggestions for writers, providing them with inspiration and fresh perspectives. One of the key features of Verb is its ability to understand the context and tone of a piece of writing. This allows the tool to generate ideas that are relevant and fitting for the specific project a writer is currently working on. This feature is one of the most significant advantages of using Jurassic One models, as they can understand and generate text that is coherent and consistent with the given context. Another unique aspect of Verb is that it can provide suggestions for different types of writing, such as fiction, nonfiction, even poetry. This versatility makes it a valuable tool for writers of all genres and styles. Now, Verb is a great example of how large language models can be used to elevate real pain. It helps writers overcome their writer's block by providing them with inspiration and fresh ideas. The team behind this tool identified a need and came up with a clever solution that utilizes the capabilities of Jurassic One models. It is a great example, in my perspective, of how innovative concepts, solving real problems, and enhancing existing functionality can lead to another great project. And I encourage all of you to go and check out both Verb and AI Dungeon if you haven't had the chance to play with them beforehand. Now let's dive into one more example, and then we'll talk about the other pillars. So, Coach Me. I'm guessing that most of you haven't heard about Coach Me unless you are South Africans. But if you don't, let me tell you, Coach Me was created by Harambee. It is a smart chatbot that uses AI21 Studio's Jurassic One language models to help young adults in South Africa prepare for job interviews and land their first job. This chatbot was developed to address the issue of unemployment among young South Africans and to bridge the gap between unemployed individuals with no experience and perfectly trainable and employable individuals. The chatbot CoachMe was designed to provide a conversation-based learning experience that uses evidence-based techniques to affect measurable behavior change in its users. This is such a long line. I'll explain. One of the key features of CoachMe is its ability to understand the context of each conversation and build trust with the individuals that interact with it and respond naturally, guiding them towards their career goals. This feature is made possible by the use of AI21 Studio's Jurassic 1 models, which can understand and generate text that is coherent and consistent with the given context, just like Verb and AI Dungeon. CoachMe was developed as a solution to the problem of unemployment among young South Africans during the pandemic, when face-to-face processes were not possible anymore. The chatbot helped Harambee to increase the conversion rate by 20%. That's a lot in signups, and by creating a new virtual onboarding process that was low touch yet incredibly authentic. In conclusion, CoachMe is a great example of how large language models can be used to elevate a real pain, in this case, unemployment among young adults. It is a clever solution that utilizes the capabilities of Jurassic 1 models to provide a personalized, conversation-based learning experience that guides individuals towards their career goals. It demonstrates how innovative concepts, solving real problems, and enhancing an existing functionality, in this case, chatbots, can lead to a great project. Okay, the moment you've all been waiting for. Let's talk about the Rick and Morty episode generator. Those of you who participated yesterday in Yuval's workshop got the chance to had a glimpse on that. Maybe some of you already cloned this project from our GitHub repo. It's an open source. I'll talk about it probably a lot more during this hackathon, but we encourage all of you to throw in your PRs and make it better, because this is a great example of an MVP, a minimum viable product. The way that we see it, you can all submit a project that incorporates Jurassic 1 models in a simple but yet useful, in a useful function. In this case, we created this generator to show you how you can, by 3 simple API calls, build a one-pager game. In this case, I know that it's not very useful for the help of the world, but it is fun, and you can use it to make something that is unique and fun and pretty easy to build and manage. Let me take you to the code base for starters. You know what? We'll talk about the code base in a second. Let's talk about the GitHub repo first. So I need to move out from the presentation. We'll get to the GitHub repo in a moment. First of all, this is the project. This is how it looks. Those of you who haven't seen it before, you just generate a title. Let me just check that I have my API key pasted. I don't. So let me grab my API key. One moment, please. You know what? This is a good example to show all of you how to grab your API key after you open your account in AI21 Studio. It's very easy. I'm guessing most of you already tried it. You just go to your account page. I encourage you not to steal my private API key, but you just grab your API key from your account page, and that's it. You have it. I'll take this back to the sidebar. And I'm watching all of you on Twitch at the same time, so I need to fix my window up here. Okay, so I copied my API key. Now I can play the game. Here, for those who are not sure where to find it, if you're gonna play with the code base later, you have a link over here to find your own API key. So now the game is running locally on my machine and is comprised of 3 stages. First of all, the Jurassic One generated a made-up title for for a Rick and Morty episode, and based on the title, now the next API call is generating a plot, like a summary for the page. It's for the not for the page. I'm sorry, for the episode. It's going to tell me what happens in this imaginary episode that doesn't exist, but was created. The title was created, and this is used in the prompt. I'm not going to dive into the prompt engineering behind this. I'm going to talk about the code a little bit, about the engineering itself. But now when I will generate a plot for an episode that's called the seasonal ass kicker, I don't like this title. I'm going to generate a new title. Rumple's Why Not? Let's generate another one until I will like it. Mr. Meeseeks goes to Washington. I love this. I love this title. So now the next API call will generate a plot for the episode based on this made-up title. It takes a few seconds because we're sending an API call for the Grande model, and now we have a full-on plot. And now the third button will generate will evoke the less function in this one pager game. It will generate the end scene, the funny part that happens after the credits in every Rick and Morty episode. It will generate what happens in this last scene based on everything that happens here in the plot. I'm not going to read all of it, but I encourage all of you to go ahead and play with it a little bit. And there we have it. So this is the whole application. It creates a made-up title, then it creates a made-up plot that is based on the title, and then it creates a made-up end scene, post-credit scene, based on the plot. For those who aren't familiar with the word plot, this is how we call a summary of anything that happens in a movie or in a TV series. This is the project. You can all just clone it and or fork it. You can find you can learn how to clone it and play it in the README file. And I will dive deeper into the code base in a few seconds. But before we go there, let's go back to the presentation and talk a little bit about the meaning of good code or beautiful code, and of course, documentation. So let's get back to it. Let me just get back my presentation view over here. We need to go back. We were not here. I'm sorry for this hiccup. Okay. This is something that I've added to the presentation just now. It's an idea that Yuval had that you can all think about when incorporating AI21 Studios API to your projects. Feel free to be creative and integrate open source projects and external APIs to the project that you will submit. In this case, Yuval just used the plot that was generated by the Rick and Morty generator. He used it as a prompt in Midjourney. So this is a good example of what happens when you just take the plots that our app created and you throw it into Midjourney. Midjourney understands what's going on, and oh no, sorry. I'm using my mouse too easily. This is a great example of how you can incorporate, in this case, Midjourney and AI21 Studio. This is another example. Something happens in the plot, and Midjourney creates a few options of visuals of what happens there. Use your imagination. This is all I'm saying. Okay, we still have two more pillars. You remember? Let's get back to them. Okay, so maintaining a beautiful code. When building a project, it's important not to focus just on its functionality, but also on the quality of the code. A well-structured and readable code that not only makes it easier to maintain and update the project, but it also makes it more attractive to potential collaborators, employers, investors, whatnot. Eventually, you will take the projects that you are submitting. They're still yours. You can use them in the real world. Think about it and keep it in mind. One way to ensure beautiful and readable code is to follow best practices, such as using consistent ideation and naming conventions and commenting your code. We will see it in a moment. And breaking it down into smaller, reusable functions and components. Another great practice is to use tools that can automate the process of enforcing code style and consistency, such as Tab9, such as GitHub Copilot, such as GitLens, such as Linter. Remember all these when starting to work on your code. Another best practice is to use version control systems. I hope you all use some sort of Git control version, but if you don't, it's never too late to incorporate it in. This will allow developers to keep track on changes that made in the code base and collaborate with other developers and easily revert to previous versions in case of bugs or errors. It's also important to keep your code up to date with the latest technologies and trends. Using libraries and frameworks that are widely adopted into the industry can greatly simplify the development process and improve performance. So in short, building a project with a beautiful and well-structured and readable code is essential for its long-term success. By following best practices, using modern tools, and keeping your code base up to date, you can create a project that not only works well, but is also easy to understand, maintain, and improve. And I want to elaborate a little more about the things that I just mentioned. So let's dive in shortly into the code base of the Rick and Morty generator. So for that, I will need to show you my VS Code. I will enlarge the fonts here a little bit just to make sure that you can all see it. Let's take this file, for example. I hope you can all see it well. This is an example of a piece of code in the project that I wrote. I'm not saying that I'm a great developer. Actually, I'm a mediocre developer. But I do know I do know some rules about what makes a good code. So here's an example of how I built a pretty lousy code. First of
Excuse me,
all,
Yotam, let me
yeah.
just double check because we can't see your code.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that
Oh,
it's
I think
correctly now. Are you sharing the
no.
screen?
I'm sharing the screen, but I think that the problem is that I'm just sharing the presentation as a view. Maybe I should share the whole screen
Yes,
instead.
please. Yeah,
Okay,
would be
so
better.
let me fix it here. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, one moment. I'm sorry about this, guys. Change windows, I think, right? I should probably show you this right now. Okay, now you can see my code, right?
Yes, we can. No, that's
Great.
great.
Okay, I will turn it. I will return back to the presentation afterwards. So, as I said before, this is a good example of what makes bad code. I know that for some of you, this is nothing new. The developers among you will probably find this part pretty boring and not very unique. But for some people, I think this is very important to hear. So as you can see, we have one major problem in this code. First of all, it has no comments. If I didn't write this code and I see it for the first time, I'm not very sure that I would understand what I'm seeing here. Though the function names are pretty self-explanatory, I don't have any idea what every function here does what other function it calls, where it gets its imports and dependencies. So it's just, if it's not my code, I will probably have to investigate a long time before I understand what's going on here. Another thing that happens here is that I didn't follow the first rule of code, which is dry. Dry is a phenomenon for don't repeat yourself. And as you can see here, I'm repeating myself constantly. Instead of using, in this case, I'm showing you example of React.js code, but everything that I'm saying here is true for any other programming language. And when you submit your projects, keep in mind that we will take a good look at the code that you're submitting. And if you make it easier for us to understand what we're seeing, it will make it easier for you to get a higher score. So this is a bad example of repetitive code. Instead of providing, in this case, instead of providing my button components and my text input components the same props, I'm throwing them into each one of them separately. I'm providing inline styling parameters and values. And I'm not explaining anything that's going on here. So this is not terrible code, but it's okay code. It's not great. But take a look at this component. This component is a great example of great code. Why? First of all, I have comments on almost each line that explains what's going on in each function and in each class. The namings of the functions are self-explanatory, so I know what's going on. So at least I can get a grip of what's going on when they are invoked. I'm also using, as you can see, I'm using functional components and React hooks. This is a good example of using up-to-date methods. I could have used the old, in this case, React.js. I could have used the old way that functions were used with component did mount and component is loading and all the class components that were used up until, I don't know, 2016 or 2018, I think. But these days, the industry is using functional components and state components and React hooks. So I'm not a big savvy of Python or other programming languages, but when you're choosing your technologies, make sure that you're using something up to date. Another good example of good code is a code that helps the user even out, that helps both the user and the developer in its DevTool environment, in this case, in the browser. So as you can see, we have a console log here that lets the developer and the end user know when they take a look at it in the browser that everything here went well. Why? Because we have the console log here. So these are just basic tips of how to maintain good code, but keep them in mind, okay? Now let's get back to the presentation. I think that I already know how to do this now. I need to change my window view, right? Yes. So we're back. Not here, sorry. I will need to do this. No, sorry. Can you see my screen now again, or you're still seeing the code? You're still seeing the code. I know.
Yeah, it's still the code.
Okay, okay. But now you're seeing the presentation again. Okay, thank you. So we talked about the code base, and now it takes us to the fourth pillar. Remember, we had the fourth pillar, which was superb documentation. So we're gonna do this shortly because I think I'm already taking a lot of the time. Now, having a well-written documentation is an essential part of any project. It not only helps others understand how your project works and how to use it, but it also makes it easier to maintain and update in the future. Well-written documentation should be clear, concise, and easy to understand. It should include information on how to install and set up the project, how to use it, and any known limitations or bugs. It's also okay to mention them. It's also important to keep the documentation up to date with the latest changes and updates to the project, but this shouldn't bother you as you submit the project for the first time, of course. Now, having a good documentation can also make it easier for others to contribute to your project if you're gonna share it as an open source one, whether it's by fixing bugs, adding new features, or simply understanding how it works. In addition, a good documentation can help to attract more users and contributors to your project. It can also make it more attractive for employers, organizations, and investors, as it reflects the project maintainer's attention to detail and ability to communicate effectively, which is always important. So in summary, well-written documentation is crucial for the success of a project. It helps others understand how to use and contribute to a project and makes it easier to maintain and update in the future. It's an investment that pays off in the long run, you know? Now, having that said, in this hackathon, you are only required to provide a detailed README file, okay? You don't need to build a whole documentation in a separate domain unless you want to, but I would focus on just maintaining a good README file. I'll show you an example of a good README file in a second that covers the essential parts of your project. I went back. I'm sorry, 1 second. Previous. Sorry about this. Beautiful code. Okay, great documentation. Let me show you an example of an amazing documentation in my perspective. LangChain is a Python library that I just came across a few days ago, and it blew me off the window, really. In short, I'm not going to elaborate on the library itself. You're all welcome to go in and see it. I will share the link later. Someone was really creative and found a way to chain a few large language models and AI21 Studio, the Jurassic 1 models among them together. So when people want to incorporate a few or many large language models together in their application, they can use this library to do so. But this is not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about this beautiful README file. It's not just beautiful and appealing in my perspective. Maybe you will think otherwise, but it covers the essential parts and the essential meaning of this library. When I approached this library for the first time, immediately I understood how to use it and what it can bring me, and what I can do to use it in my own applications. It explains exactly what this is. It explains how to install it. It can send me to the real documentation. They also have a great domains documentation, but I'm not going to cover it here because it's too much. But it explains all the parts in it and what they mean. This library is made of chains and agents and memory evaluation, and it even explains what I need to do to contribute, even though it's pretty easy to comprehend, but it still explains what I need to do to contribute to this library if I want to. So as you can see, it's nothing special. This is just a one-pager README that explains all the parts of the library itself, how to use it, what are the main components, and how it is beneficial for me. If your submitted project will include a README in this level, you can all rest assured that it will affect the way that we evaluate your project. So keep this in mind, okay? Let's return to the slideshow. And let's wrap it up. Let me just put this on full screen. Okay, so let's wrap this up, shall we? It was, I know it was a little long, I'm sorry. So in conclusion, building a great project starts with a unique and imaginative idea, but it doesn't stop there. The key components that make up the foundation of a successful project are an innovative concept, its usefulness, beautiful and readable code, and well-written documentation. Remember to think outside the box, embrace the spirit of creativity and innovation, and push the boundaries of what you think is possible. Keep in mind that the possibilities with generative AI are endless, and the goal of this hackathon is to showcase the potential of this technology. Now, as you begin brainstorming and planning your projects, keep in mind the importance of addressing real-world issues, relieving real pain points, and enhancing existing functionalities. Make sure that your code is well-structured, readable, up-to-date with the latest technologies. And don't forget about documentation. It is crucial for your project's long-term success and how we evaluate your submission. I believe that every single one of you has the potential to come up with something truly groundbreaking. So let's embrace the spirit of creativity and innovation and show the world what we can do with Jurassic 1 models. And let's just start this hackathon with and create something truly outstanding. Thank you very much.